Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Club. This is the place everyday real estate investors gather to share their best stories, biggest insights, and favorite tactics to grow a portfolio of cash flowing properties in today's market. Here's your host, Gabe Peterson.
All right, we are back with another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. Today we have Nick Prefontaine with us. This is a family affair. We just had Chris Prefontaine, which turns out to be his dad. Awesome. Love having multiple people from the same family on the show. Just those goes to show that if you got a daughter or a son, they may follow in your footsteps, which is what we always like to see. So Nick, I'm super excited to jump into this. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
I was super excited to be here, Gabe. Happy to help you listeners.
And I didn't say this in the intro. Nick focuses on single family buying with terms, so buying with seller financing, which is what we love talking about here. So, Nick, I gave you the intro. Why don't you tell us, how did you get started in real estate?
Sure. So the Cliff Notes version, as we already went over. So people always ask me how I got started, and I go back to that fateful day back in 2003. I was at ski club with my friends, and on the way to the mountain, I realized that I'd forgot one thing that I usually brought when we went to that mountain, my helmet. I didn't think anything would happen. I thought I'd just be careful, be safe. Then once we got to the mountain, we headed straight for the top. On the way to the top, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining. So people were wiping out everywhere. So needless to say, it wasn't our first go around. So got to the top, buckled into my snowboard and charged towards the biggest jump in the terrain park with all my speed. And going into the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, which threw me off balance. And that's the last thing that I remember. I was told that I landed on my head and I wasn't wearing a helmet.
Ugh.
The doctors actually told my parents by the time I got to the hospital in the ICU that I probably wasn't ever going to be able to walk, talk, or eat again. And there were several things that broke in my favor, but one of them was that my parents didn't let that influence me. Meaning, even though I was in a coma, so when I got in the accident, I was in a coma for 3 weeks. I don't remember a month. However, when I was in the ICU, the doctors came into my room to share the more grim news at the beginning, especially at the beginning. And my parents stopped them. They said, no, not in front of him, because they understood that even though that I was in a coma, they knew I was still taking information. So they made them step outside to share it with them. And once I got outside, as I mentioned, they said that I probably would never be able to walk, talk, or eat again. Fast forward a month after I was in the coma for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month. I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where I began my journey of having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. And going through that experience, I didn't even realize it until recently, a couple of years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when a mentor pointed it out to me. That she asked me how. She goes, "Oh, that's amazing. How did you do that? How did you recover from your snowboarding accident?" And I said, "I don't know. I just got up and just kept working every day." And she's like, "No, deeper." She kept asking me, "How'd you do it? How'd you do it?" And I was so frustrated at one point, Gabe. I was like, I don't know. But out of it, we developed the STEP system. And STEP is an acronym that I unknowingly used to recover from my snowboarding accident. And that's support, trust, energy, and persistence. And I can give, if we have time at the end, I can give your listeners free info where they can download the whole STEP system for free off my website. That's a different website, but I can give that to them. Then after, if you fast forward a little bit, I had to, as I said, learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. And less than 60 days later, after being aware of my surroundings and the work that was left in front of me, I ran out of the hospital. And that was always my goal, to run out of the hospital. if you can picture what family and what parents wouldn't want a full recovery for their son that had gotten into a life-threatening accident. Of course, they said that and they were talking that, and this was before I could even speak. I had in the back of my head a voice saying, no, you're going to run out. So then running out became our common goal and what everyone was working towards. The doctors, the therapists, the nurses, everyone was on the same page. And that was my support. That's the first letter in the STEP system. After running out of the hospital, it wasn't like my work was done. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy all summer long, in order, being tutored all summer long, along with being tutored all summer long to move on to high school with the rest of my classmates. And Gabe, it's a little surreal that you probably get this. When you're younger, time is compressed. So like 6 months, a year, 18 months is like, oh my God, that's so far away.
Right. Yeah.
And you think when you're 14, 15, that, oh, the person a grade ahead of me is so much older than me. That's really not the case. It's a short amount of time. And it's like after I finished rehab, only 18 months later, I was knocking on the doors of distressed sellers, notice of default sellers that hadn't paid their mortgage in months, sometimes years. And this was right around the time when I got my learner's permit. So my learner's permit and my license. So I couldn't have anyone in my car with me, but I was door knocking up to 70 doors in a day. I would do like 50 to 70 doors in a day because I had to work. I mean, I had to go to school during the week. So the only time I had was on like weekends and holidays. Fast forward a little bit, I got my real estate license after I graduated from high school. And then I let my real estate license go back in 2015, 2016. And that led me to what I'm doing today, which is working hand in hand with our rent-to-own buyers. To one, we have to get the buyer to call us. So I started out handling those calls when I was still a realtor. There was some crossover, and then my dad asked me. He first asked me if I'd help him with the marketing, and I was like, no, I got my own thing going on. I'm a successful realtor. And then he asked me a few times, so I eventually said yes, and then working on the marketing turned into working with the buyers. And then over the years, I developed a very particular process that we have to bring our rent-to-own buyers through so that when they do come to the end of their agreement, they're able to get their own loan. So we buy homes, just to keep it simple for your listeners. We buy homes a number of ways. We'll buy them with a lease purchase, or other known as rent to own, or lease to own. We'll
Lease
buy
option is what a lot of people know it as, right?
Yeah, we always, so on the flip side of that, when I'm working with buyers, I never use the term option, because that's like, oh, okay, well, I'll do this, I'll put a down payment down, I'll do this, and then after 2 years, I have the option whether I want to buy it or not. So we do a more definitive purchase. So we always refer to it as a purchase, and we treat all of our rent-to-own buyers like they're buyers. So rent-to-own is a way we'll purchase, especially if the home has a mortgage on it, and we're not actually closing on it, subject to, which is another way that we buy. So we'll close on the home subject to the existing loan. Another way is owner financing. If there's no debt on the property, we can structure, one of the ways that we do it is we can structure principal only payments. So subject to, rent to own, owner financing. Those are just a few. Those aren't all, but we're always selling them through our rent to own program. And that's kind of what I specialize in. Specialize working hand in hand with the buyers, bringing them through a process so that by the time they get to the end of their agreement, they're going to be able to qualify for their own loans. So I not only do our properties, Gabe, but I also help all of our associates that we have all over the country to develop this same business systems and processes that mirror our own, so then they can get up and running as well.
Nice, man. I love it. And, I never like to hear people go through hard things like you went through, that snowboard accident, but those hard times define us and then give us the strength that we need to get through future hard times. And it sounds like that moment was no different for you. You got the strength to keep pushing after the accident, and you've turned that into great success in real estate. So we love to see that. And I'm not comparing myself at all to you here, but man, I used to snowboard without a helmet back in the day, and I don't know what I was thinking. I don't even think I owned a helmet when I went snowboarding. It was pretty dumb looking back at it. I'm glad, knock on wood, I'm glad I never had an accident like yourself. But yeah, when you're younger, sometimes you forget things like that, and happens to the best of us.
Yeah, it made me really made me who I am today. So it was given to me, God, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it. It was given to me because they knew that I'd be able to handle it, and then in turn affect others and help others, lead them through their trauma or their crisis. And that's really what I'm doing now with all my speaking and coaching that I'm doing individually, which is a step system that I told you about. So I can give you listeners a way they can download that for free if they're interested at the end.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to hear more about that. But first, let's dive into, the real estate systems that you guys have developed. You guys love sellers financing. You love creative financing, buying on terms. And that's something that is a great tool to have in anybody's pocket. Especially with single family, you can get so creative with those lower price points. So first, how do you guys find the deals that come to you? Do you market specifically for somebody that you think would be amenable to like seller financing or subject to or anything like that?
Generally speaking, Gabe, the just to keep it simple, a lot of the properties that we buy have had trouble selling on the open market. For instance, with a realtor. Not all of our deals come from that, but a lot of our deals come from homes that have had trouble selling for whatever reason on the open market.
Oh, so you guys look for expired listings.
Mainly, yeah. And then we also do for sale by owners, but those tend to be longer. They're still good leads, but those tend to be kind of a longer timeline because they're for sale by owner. They're for sale because they think they can do it on their own. So it tends to be a longer lead time, whereas expired listings are more of an immediate thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the homes that we've got, for whatever reason, and over the years, now we're sitting in 2023. So like if you look back over the last 3 or 4 years, people haven't had a problem selling conventionally on the open market because rates have been so low and homes have been selling like hotcakes. No problem for a lot of people. However, even in there are several people who still, for whatever reason, can't sell. In any market, there's going to be expired listings. So either they couldn't get the price they wanted or need to make their next move, or in the time frame that they were looking for. So that's when we kind of step in and structure a deal that's going to work for them, almost like a delayed cash sale, where we'll give them a premium, we'll give them a little bit of a higher price. It just isn't going to come all now. So we'll take over all responsibility for maintenance, repair, and upkeep over the course of our term. And along with paying the underlying debt or the payment that we negotiate or structure with the seller until it's cashed out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do you guys go about finding the expired listings? When I was doing single family, I generally, what was my list, my bread and butter list? I think it was it was non-owner occupied. I think like 90% equity, something like that. So I was looking for landowners, tired landowners. There we go. Tired landlords. That was the list that I was always marketing for, but I never looked at expired listings. Do you guys, I'm assuming one of you guys has your brokerage license, you use the MLS to figure out which one's expired?
We used to. So as I mentioned, I used to be a realtor. My dad was a broker owner back in the 90s and early 2000s. However, we don't need to now. We use a lead source, My Plus Leads. I don't know if you've heard of it. So you actually don't need to have your real estate license to access expired listing data. So that was one of the lead sources that actually we didn't. I'm not going to take credit for it. One of the members in our community kind of brought that to the forefront, and that's still what we use to this day.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So how does that conversation usually go? So let's say you pull a list, you got the expired listings, you send out your mailers, calls start trickling in. Are you talking with a broker generally, or is it no, because it's expired, so you wouldn't be talking to the broker. So you're talking with a seller. How does that conversation work? Generally with expired listings.
So I'll give you kind of a like 10,000 foot view answer, but like I said, I specialize in working with the buyers and helping them through the process, taking their initial call, bringing them through an education process before they see the home, and getting them in the home, and then if they're interested, getting forms back to us, and then reviewing those and doing a buyer's meeting and all that. Which I just covered the buyer process in like a couple sentences.
Boom! Look at that.
The So those are interesting. I don't know. Give me the question again. I'm sorry.
So you're marketing to expired listings, right? And so when you send out your mailer, you start getting callers from sellers who probably had their house on the market for 6 months plus. How does that conversation usually go?
Oh, yeah. So generally it's not mailers.
Okay.
That's a way that's like an additional lead source that we've got. Like if you're not, and we tell all of our associates this, if you're not getting the amount of expired listings for your area or your radius that you're looking to, and we usually recommend within 2 hours, you can do a niche list. Like you mentioned, non-owner occupants, but that's an additional thing.
Right.
Typically we're not just sending out mailers for expired listings. So we're calling.
Okay.
It's all phone work, and that's what we preach to all of our associates, that you have to get good at the phone. Which everyone, of course, you probably know this, wants to avoid the phone.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way around it. You got to pick up the phone, even if you're doing mailers. The phone is part of that. They're going to send out a mail, but they're going to call you back. You're not gonna. There's no way around the phone. That's for sure.
And it's funny you mentioned that, Gabe. So when I'm working with people, I like have them take all the buyer calls at the beginning, and because you can automate everything, but if you're not comfortable on the phone, if you're not comfortable with the questions, what are you going to do? Even after you get someone good in front of you, you're not going to know what to do with them. So there comes a certain point in all of our associates' business where they say that I literally can't keep up. I can't keep up with the number of calls coming in. I'll get through all the calls for the previous day, and there's 50 more. And that's the point that I say, okay, congratulations, you can pass now, because now you can set up automation. I didn't set up automation until I was so busy I literally couldn't even handle it. But they need to get good at the phone and understanding and handling buyer objections and buyer questions early on before they can automate. Or else, even if they have someone good in front of them, how are they going to know?
Yep. Yeah, those there really is no way around that part. I mean, it's an education that really needs to come from experience. You can learn a little bit about how to have those conversations with the seller, but you're not going to get good at it. You're not going to really understand it until you start having those conversations yourself. And it can be rough. I remember when I was doing cold calling for a single family, I'd have a list of like, I don't know how many, numbers on my Excel sheet, and I'd just go down the list. And most of them would be bad numbers, and most of the people that I actually talked to would just hang up or yell at me. And it was like 1 out of 200, 300 actually wanted to move forward. And it was, it's rough, but if you get enough of those, if you do enough volume, eventually you're going to close something, and that's when it starts to get good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
All right. So you mentioned that you're on the buyer side. You like working with the rent to own, the people that once you have the property under contract that you sell the property to. Explain a little bit. You've already gone over the process, but explain it a little bit more. Explain rent to own, the concept itself, and then how you guys make sure that you're selling these properties to somebody who is not going to default on the property on the lease to own contract.
Sure. So a couple things about that. So before we even get them in there for a property viewing, we're making sure that they're educated, meaning that they don't think, oh, okay, I'm just renting until I'm able to buy. So we actually have the process that I was referring. I'll go a little deeper because I kind of glossed over it. So every call we're saying, like, pretend you call saying, hey, Gabe, thanks for calling about our home on 123 Jump Street. Gabe, that is available through our rent to own program, and our rent to own program is not a great fit for everyone. First, before we get you in there for a viewing, want to make sure that you've seen the video on our website. And usually the answer is no, I haven't seen that. So I'm giving them the website to go look at it. Then I'm only dealing with the people that call me back. Everyone doesn't call me back or us back. So then I'm only dealing with the people that understand that they're buying a home and it requires a down payment. And then I'm getting them in to the property for a viewing. And then once they see the home, if they're interested, they'll fill out a couple of forms. We call them our next step forms. If they're interested in taking the next step, they get them back to me. How we're seeing so much success with our buyers, the buyers that we put in the home, is we treat them just like they're buyers. So they're responsible for all maintenance, repair, and upkeep over the course of their term. We stress the importance of keeping your monthly payments on time because you're the only one that you're hurting. You're not hurting us. You're hurting yourself because the lender is going to follow up with us and ask us for proof of all rents received and deposits received. As far as down payment, we're doing no less than 3%, but to get in the door, but anywhere from 3 to 10%. And it can be more than 10%, and it has been over 10%. Just if they're on the lower end of that range, 3 to 10%, we'd like to have a plan with them over the course of their lease. Call it 24 months is the majority of our buyers, what they fall into, that they're continually adding towards their down payment in lump sum payments, not monthly payments. And we find that by the time our buyers do get to the end of their lease, they're able to qualify for a loan because, candidly, Gabe, our standards in the process that we put them through is stricter than a lot of lenders and a lot of banks out there. So if the lender looks at their whole situation and says, geez, you put a down payment down, you've made additional down payments over the course of your lease, and you've kept up your rent payments, and you've kept up all maintenance and upkeep of the property over your term, why wouldn't I give you your own loan?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really helpful for people who don't have great credit, or maybe they have a mark in their history. This kind of situation really helps them get into a house. So there's a big need in the market. I just took a peek at the clock. It looks like we have run it down, though, so it's time to jump into the quick question round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. It starts with books or any form of education. I need 2 recommendations, one for general life wisdom, and then one for real estate or business specific. Before we continue on with today's guest, I want to tell you guys about a community I'm launching on School to help investors like yourself grow your own portfolio. In this community, you'll get access to all the docs I use, all the systems I've built, everything I've used to grow my own portfolio, as well as instructions and guidance on how to get out there and find great deals, how to finance those deals, and then how to manage them for great returns. Since we're just launching it, the price will be set at a measly $20 per month, and whatever price you join at is the price you'll have for life. We will be increasing the price as the group grows, so if you're at all interested in growing your portfolio along other investors, now is the time to join. I will put the link somewhere in the bio or on our podcast website at therealestateinvestingclub.com, so if you are interested, head on over there. With that said, let's get back to the podcast.
general life wisdom would be Frequency by Penny Pierce. And that was one of the first books that got me started on my journey, personal development journey of being able to know and recognize that I have this message and my story about getting into a snowboarding accident and helping others that are going through the same thing, get them through to the other side and thrive with the rest of their lives. So that was the first book that got me started on the path. It's a very deep book, and I'll just give you a little preview. The first 100 pages are not fun. However, the rest of the book is amazing because it's work. You have to do the work.
And this is Frequency, the Power of Personal Vibration by Penny Pierce. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. That's the right one. And I was just rolling. I forget the other question. Give it to me again.
That's a good recommendation. We'll say that is for general life wisdom. So do you got anything? And it doesn't have to be a book. It could be a YouTube channel, a movie, whatever. But another recommendation for business/real estate.
Business/real estate. I don't know. My mind goes, the very first book that got me interested, like I grew up in a family real estate business. So that's all I've ever known all my life. My dad, when I was little, was a builder, then a realtor, then an investor, and he kind of jockeyed in between those two all throughout my life. The way that I got, so it was always around me. I was like, I don't want to be involved in real estate. I'll figure out what else I want to do in my life. However, when I was getting my learner's permit and then getting my license right around that time, I looked at some books in his library, and one of the books I picked out was Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kawasaki. And that's not everyone knows Rich Dad Poor Dad, but that wasn't the book that got me started. Cash Flow Quadrant was what got me thinking. And then I came to him after I read it and said, I want to get involved in real estate. How do I start? And that's how I got started knocking homeowners that have received the notice of default from the bank, meaning they missed several payments up to, let's face it, this was 05, 06. So 10 to 12 payments and the bank still hadn't foreclosed. So
yeah, the Cash Flow Quadrant, that's a great book. I've never read it, but I've heard it's a good book, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So good recommendation. I'm going to move us on to the next question, and this is for your younger self. So let's go back to the Nick who was after the accident, after he was just walking out, just running out of that hospital. Go back to him, look him in the eye, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
Love this question. It's actually one of my favorite questions because I find myself repeating myself and telling this to a lot of individuals, especially people that are like just getting started and like, all right, what do I do? The thing I would say, Gabe, is slow down. Slow down. You're successful. You're successful in the very nature that you want to keep going. You want more and more and more. More is not the answer. Slow down. Make sure you're doing everything correctly and properly and by the book, so that when you do get 10 years down the line, you can look back and you don't have any regrets.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Slowing down and doing things correctly is it's not something that you're going to regret. It's so easy to want to just have things right now and then just rush through the things that you're doing, thinking that'll get you to where you want to go faster, but that's not the case. It's better to create something that'll last, to slow down and put one foot in front of the other. Eventually you're going to get there, and it's going to be in a way that you're going to be proud of. So moves us to the next question. This is about the US. It's a big place, a lot of opportunity out there. Give me the single metro you're most excited about investing in today.
The single metro that I'm most excited about investing in today, that I'm gonna say right where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's opportunity everywhere. And there are people that learn about the way that we buy and sell on terms, and use little or no down payment and without signing personally and say, oh no, that won't work where I am. You can't do it. It 100% will work where you are. You just have to believe it, and you just have to get started.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's great advice. Unless you're in a town of 50 people and there's like 5 houses in the market, it's always a good idea to just, start where you are. Start the city that you're in. If there's a house there, you can buy it. And that leads
Yeah,
us to
well, I was gonna say we always recommend, and we've always done it, gone within 2 hours, like around us, 2 hours driving distance. So if the home's within 2 hours, and sometimes some houses that we've done over the years, even a little longer, we're gonna go there because if you go to the house once or twice, and it potentially can be worth $75,000, all three paydays, the whole deal. Would you do that? Of course you would.
yeah. Would you drive somewhere for 75,000? I think I would.
Yeah.
2 hours, that's worth it. 30, 36, $37,000 an hour. All right, next question is I lost my spot. What is my next question? There it is. Biggest lesson learned through a deal gone bad. Not all of the deals are, roses. Sometimes we run into obstacles that we need to solve, problems that we need to solve. And in those they're the gems, the lessons that we learned. So what was a deal that went bad for you? And what was the biggest lesson you learned from it?
I can't pinpoint one just collectively,
Mm.
because going into COVID, we had like 50 to 60 properties. And now, several years later, we're down to probably 14 or 15 properties now. So we've exited out a lot of deals. My biggest lesson is early on, we were just, if you had a pulse and you basically could do, at least first class in security, we would accept you. And then around 2018, we started having a lot of problems with non-payment of rent and evictions, and bad things happen. And that's why I kind of put my foot down, drew the line in the sand, and said we have to like go slower with these buyers and qualify them more, and make sure we're setting them up for success.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to the piece of advice you gave earlier. It's better to do it the right way right now than to rush through it and try to get there faster, because it'll just going to be more of a headache down the road if you skip over steps that you should be taking in the moment.
Yep.
All right, and that leads us to the very last question. Actually, second to last question. You mentioned SNAP, I believe was the acronym earlier. Why don't you run us through that and then tell the listeners where they can find that the thing that you're offering?
Sure. Yeah, close. You got a few of the letters. It's STEP.
Step,
So
not snap.
yeah, no, I'll run.
My
I'll run.
handwriting is really bad.
That's okay. Well, STEP's a new one. We can do a new one today.
There you go.
STEP is support. So you want to make sure you have the support of your family and friends right from the beginning. And this is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. You have to trust that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. Trust it. And it also starts with trust that you have this desire or calling inside of you for a reason. You have to follow it. E is energy. Maintaining your energy, your body's energy, will allow you to continue to move forward and affect people at the highest degree possible. If you don't have your energy, how can you expect to help other people, let alone yourself? And then P is persistence. Once you've taken your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. So by continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. And even that, Gabe, was a 10,000 foot view, really. So if anyone's interested, they can go to my website and download the STEP system for free. That's nickprefontaine.com/step. And like I said, they can download the STEP system for free and take their first step today.
Awesome. I love it. That is support, trust, energy, and persistence. The STEP program sounds awesome. If you guys want that,
let's brainstorm this though. Snap. What are you thinking?
Yeah, right. I haven't had enough coffee to figure out a new acronym, so I'll just leave it at SNAP, and we'll figure it out later. So that is the URL was Nick Prefontaine, and Prefontaine is spelled prefontaine.com/step, not snap. So if you guys want that, want to get that program, just go to that link, and I'm actually going to put that link in the show notes, so you can just click that and end up on Nick's website.
Yeah, and then
Right,
I was just gonna say if anything about the real estate, because I know this is a real estate show, so I didn't want to miss the opportunity. But if anything about what I said about buying and selling on terms, and creating 3 paydays potentially that can be worth up to $75,000 per deal, was like piqued your interest at all, you can go to our website, smartrealestatecoach.com. And if you scroll down, you can get registered for a free master's class that's going to tell you all about how we buy and sell on terms. Also, it's going to talk about our 3 payday system per deal. Get paid now, get paid over the course of the deal, and get paid the third time when it closes. And they'll be able to take their next step if it is of interest to them at the end of that.
Sweet. I love it. That is the second URL, and I'm going to put that in the show notes as well, smartrealestatecoach.com. So Nick, that wraps it up. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great weekend.
You too, Gabe. It was a blast. Thank you.
Absolutely. For everybody who's here with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, reach out to me, Gabe with realestateinvestingclub.com. And as always, if you guys want to support the show, like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. All right, before I officially sign off, I have a quick announcement to make. If you're interested in becoming a passive investor in one of my deals, my own company, Kaizen Properties, is looking for capital partners for our upcoming projects. We invest in what are known as recession-resistant assets, mainly self-storage facilities, mobile home and RV parks, and industrial properties. If you're interested in investing and would like to learn a little bit more about my company, our investing criteria, and some of the previous projects we've done, go to the Real Estate Investing Club podcast at therealestateinvestingclub.com and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. Click on the Invest With Us button. That'll pop up the investor form. Fill that out, and we will reach back out to you as soon as we can. Or if you prefer a little bit more of a personal touch, you can reach out to me at gabe@therealestateinvestingclub.com. So really, that is it. Again, it was a pleasure hanging out with you guys during this episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.